Jesus is the answer. I'm pretty sure you've heard this a couple of times. Missing is the question. Jesus is the answer to what? Jesus is the answer to our broken relationship with God. When God created Adam and Eve, they enjoyed a perfect fellowship with Him. But Adam and Eve sinned by disobeying God, and thereby they brought death into the world. Romans 5:12, therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. A significant part of that death is spiritual death. Spiritual death, what is that?
What you say?
You should check next week's video for that. In Genesis 3:21, we find God covering Adam and Eve, and He promised a Redeemer who could defeat Satan and reconcile God and man. The Old Testament narrative gradually reveals God's plan to save man. The New Testament narrative shows us that Jesus is the promised Redeemer. In John 14:6, we find Jesus saying He is the way, the truth, and the life. No one can go to the Father except through Him. So Jesus atoned for our sins, restores the possibility of a relationship with God. Jesus is the only answer to our broken relationship with God. It is Jesus who mends our relationship with God so that we can fellowship with Him, do life with Him in this present time and for eternity. Jesus is the answer to our guilty conscience. I don't know about you, but I'm not perfect. Paul puts it this way in Romans 7:15. He says, for I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Even after we are saved, we still sin and experience temporary consequences of sin. So in us, we have this constant fight against sin, and sometimes we fall. And I love this fight because the Bible describes it as a good fight, the good fight of faith. Sin keeps us from fellowshipping God fully. But because of Jesus, we have this promise from God that if we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us. Jesus is the reason we can receive forgiveness and be purified. Jesus is the answer to our broken relationships with each other. When Adam and Eve sinned, they did not only break their relationship with God, but they also damaged their relationship between each other. Humans have been struggling in relationship to one another ever since. But look at Cain and Abel. Relationship breakdown manifests itself in various ways, including the way we erect walls between races, tribes, cultures. The list goes on. In the New Testament era, there was a major dispute between the Gentiles and the Jews. And we find Jesus breaking that barrier as He spoke to the woman at the well. Ephesians 2:14, for He Himself is our peace, who has made us both one and has broken down in His flesh the dividing wall of hostility. Jesus is the answer for all types of disharmony. Because we have received forgiveness through Christ we can forgive others. Jesus is the answer to a meaningless existence. The writer of Ecclesiastes bewails the meaningless of pursuing worldly pursuits apart from God. The dude did it all, and he came to this conclusion: all is just vanity. Vanity after vanity. It's just like everything is just vapor. When we are spiritually dead, life is ultimately empty. Nothing in this world will fully satisfy the deepest longing of our hearts. But in Jesus, we have purpose. In Jesus, I found purpose. I found meaning in my life. You can do that too. Jesus says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But He came so that we may have life. I love my pastor. He says this: Jesus came so that we may live life. Life in its fullness every way. We're invited to be co-laborers with God in the world, tasked with sharing the gospel and making disciples. We can do nothing apart from Christ, but in Him we bear much fruit. Jesus is the answer to our worries and doubts. John 16:33, Jesus says, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In this world you would have tribulations. Some version says troubles. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Life involves hardships, and with hardships comes worries and fears and doubts. In the midst of all that, Jesus brings peace. Jesus brings victory. And the peace that He gives us, no one is able to take it away, because it's not the peace that the world can give you. So in other words, it can be stormy all around you, but just because of Jesus, you can just walk peacefully through the storms. Matthew 6:25, if you read all the way to verse 33, He encourages us not to worry and be anxious about what we're going to eat, what we're going to put on. The same God who watches over the birds on the air and watches the lilies and the grass and the things that we're seeing grow around us, that same God who takes care of those things will take care of us. I love how in Hebrews 4 from 15 to around about 16, but just read the whole chapter. It shows us that Jesus is able to sympathize with us because he has lived as human in this broken world. Jesus gives us peace and he keeps us to endure and even rejoice in the hardships of these lives. Lastly, Jesus is the answer to the problems of this world. Experiences told us that the world is broken and in need of repair, and Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him there is no other. Jesus is the way. Sing it! Jesus is the answer. He has a plan to fix this broken world. Isaiah 9 verse 6 to 7. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. In our war-torn world peace is proven an elusive goal. But one day Jesus will make things right. He can make it right. Jesus will make it right, people. Read for yourself Isaiah 11, read for yourself Revelation 21. Actually, read the whole books so that you get the gist. And come back and give me feedback on the comments. No matter what our individual needs is, Jesus is the answer for our lives today. And he promises a better future to come. So girl, Matty Smiles, I'm out.